Howdy doody, pretty peoples. It's Tuesday, April 23rd, 2013. It's daily time. When is it not daily time? When it's 5 after 7 on a weekday. It's daily number 577, and I think this is going to be a pretty short daily. We might just do 3 click and queen is what I didn't mean to say. Quick and clean. It's going to be the daily, as long as I don't keep stuttering. We're going to be looking at a PvZ build from Feast that I just thought was really well executed. I love really, really thin, careful timings and good building placement to solve a lot of those problems. And we're just going to go through this short game. It's about 21 minutes, but we're going to review it multiple times. And if it is a short daily, then great. I see no reason to keep going. I want to keep this focused on the beauty that is this PvZ build order from Millennium Feast. Let me just drink a little. Have not done a PvZ daily in a whilst. Nothing to announce this week other than, of course, the After Hours Gaming League Grand Finals that will be happening on Saturday, April 27th. Go to day9.tv for more information. Alright. Whew. Now, what we're going to do is watch a game between Millennium Feast down in this bottom left-hand corner versus Acer's Bly. This is from the Acer Team Story Cup that Take TV has amazingly provided all the replays for. You can go to acer.taketv.net.com. I can't remember what the little ad end is there, but this is where I got this replay from, and this is on Neo Planet S, which is already kind of an unusual map. In particular, I think the most notable thing is that outside your front, there are actually 2 completely disjointed attack paths. One along the top side to your opponent, and of course, there's one along the bottom side. It is a very circular map. There is technically a center, but because it goes the opposite diagonal than the one connecting the 2 opponents, no one really travels aggressively through these 2 positions, or through this center position. And as though it weren't interesting enough, we have these sort of weird outer rings. So there's the inner ring where our primary movement is, and then there's the outer ring. So I'll be referring to those as outer, inner, and then the upper and lower side. And like any map, when you look at it at the start, most important question to ask yourself is, what is my third base going to be, and how am I going to take it? In fact, all strategy, all fundamentals of build orders boil down to those questions. And I mean even things like, I think, 2 base all-ins, you would say, okay, I'm literally not going to take a third base. I'm going to get a huge army. But so in this position, what would be a good third base to take? Obviously our natural is comfortable to take, unless it's Steps of War, in which case it gets cut. We never play that map again. So we have this natural expansion. What's going to be our third base? I'm actually going to hit the play button, so that way all this text disappears. This is the most common third base, due to the fact that it provides a pretty reasonable... God, that fades so slowly. Yeah. It provides a pretty reasonable defensive position. We wall this off with buildings and some cannons, and then we can park most of our army here or most of our army here. And given that there's a kind of open space here and an open space here, the instinct is to say, well, I'd probably need a good amount of units. Take something like Ohana. Not really a very big open space. We don't need a lot of units. We can get away with going like 4 gate plus robo expand. We don't need a 6th gate or something like that. Daybreak, another map where turtling is very, very nice. But these big open spaces lead to some issues. Now, it is possible to take this as a third base, but note that we immediately have a wider back to worry about. We have this central region as a big attack path that, you know, we'll have a little bit of issue managing. We're a little bit more comfortable on the south side, though, because we theoretically already have defense set up due to our natural expansion. Also, another reason why we might want to consider doing this is that 95% of Zergs take this as their third base. So that means that we will have a very quick and clean and easy push path up to here and back down again, or, you know, all the way up here. I mean, just imagine if you look at the mini-map where you'd see an army here. If your base is there and the base you're assaulting is there, it's very difficult for him to attack this third. So that is a much more offensive type positioning. And I bring all this up because in this game, Feast is going to get a stupidly early third base. Now, what I want to do, I guess I'll call it the first watching of this game, is talk a little bit actually about Bly and Bly's opening. Bly is going to be doing a very Hots-ish sort of build. Most of the time, Zerg players would go expand once, expand twice, and then think about getting a gas geyser. But what a lot of Zerg players are doing is getting the gas much earlier, getting Zergling speed, and also getting a layer super early for something. So we're going to be talking about why Bly's build is good and modern. We're also going to be talking about how Feast's build deals with both this play from Bly, and also how Feast's build deals with a more general purpose Zerg play. So here's how we're going to do part one. I'm going to watch through this game fairly quickly. We're going to do this kind of swiftly so we can get the general gist of this. And then when we come back in part two, we'll finish whatever we haven't, and then we're going to re-watch through this and carefully examine Feast's opening. So we're going to start general, and we're going to get more specific as the time goes on. So Feast does some usual typical positioning. Bly does this stuff. Hatch, pool. Increasingly becoming common as players are getting better at dealing with cannon rushes, and Protosses are not going for forge first as often. Gateway timings we're not going to look at too specifically on this first go-around. I wanted to make sure that we at least got to see this game and be like, ooh, that's so good. So here is this opening from Bly. We see that Feast is doing the smart thing. Feast has already just checked for a third, and just saw that there was a second. A third base will generally go down between 4:15 and 4:30. Again, assuming your opponent is good. If your opponent is bad, then it might take longer, but that's fine, because if he's bad enough to take an expansion that late, he's probably bad enough to lose to almost anything we throw at him. But yeah, just getting the sense of everything that's happening. All strategies, again, boil down to these third bases. If my opponent is taking a third base, I know he's going macro mode. If he's not taking a third base, wow, look at Feast. Look at how aggressively he's checking for these third bases. Still trying to find if there's a way that he can sneak up to this top side, which he totally does effectively. And if you're a Protoss player in this position, you're instantly going to think, well, hey now, wait a minute. Look at him clicking there. Yes, no third base. Oh, glory be. All right. That's a big bit of information that Feast is already gaining. Now, you might say, oh, well, there's the third base going down. Oh, he just missed it. He didn't miss it. Very critically, Feast saw that there was no third base started by 5:30. That's a very valuable bit of information. In fact, if we go to Bly's base, we can see why. He's getting speed. He's actually leaving dudes in gas. A typical fast layer with air quotes around it is at 7 minutes. Fast layer equals 7 minutes on 3-base Zerg. And we see that Bly is actually going to be getting it at 6 minutes. Wow, this actually looks like Acer's Sella responded to me. He totally did not. That was just a plant. This should go down by like 6:15, I believe. Yeah, cool. In fact, if we go to the Acer Bly cam, we see that, you know, he snuck some Zerglings in. We're not going to worry about that too much. But Feast does have a clear sense of what is up. No early third. This isn't a late third by any means. This is kind of like, alright, well, Zerg went for third, but Zerg didn't go for like the 4-minute, 15-second third that Stefano popularized. So here we're going to see some real sexiness out of Feast. When we do the in-depth examination in part 2, we'll be answering questions like, why on earth is there no Zealot here? Why just one Sentry? And all that good jazz. But for now, I just want to note the broad plays. Early 4 gases, Swift Stargate to get this Void Ray out, AFAP as fast as possible. Instantly goes target firing down Overlords. And look at this. Snap Insta-Robo. Still one gateway, but instant Robo. 2 more gateways at the back. Now, Bly did in fact see the Stargate going down. He has in fact poked in here and seen that nothing else noteworthy is going down. So Bly does the completely intuitive response to get the Hydralisk in. Hydralisks can shoot up, helping us deal with Void Rays. And good, he sees the Hydralisk in. Also, very importantly, the Hydralisks have the speed upgrade, so Bly can put pressure on. We saw Lenok do this to great success at the MLG Winter Championships. So this is a reasonable response for Bly, not just in terms of defense from air, but in terms of offense. Again, we're noticing some funky things, like that's a very late Mothership core. But great. Bly does something really, really snazzy. Excuse me, Feast does something really, really snazzy. He's poking in here, picking off as many Overlords as he can, getting as much map coverage as he can, and sneaks an expansion up here. Or so I thought. I would have defined this expansion as totally, totally snuck, with some seemingly haphazard positioning going on here. But with the usual mix of Warp Gate and Sentry, and then an ultra-fast Colossus, we can actually start to go, oh my gosh, this is actually going to work out really, really well. I love this. Cutting Thermal Lance. Much faster Colossus. Chrono boosted, in fact. These Hydralisks have only just hatched, and are only just now heading down, at the expense of all the drones. There's literally no drones mining at the third base. And Feast, with this really clever positioning, has himself neatly tucked behind these 2 photon cannons. Because what are the threats? Some Lings, some Roaches, and maybe a suicidally early Hydralisk push. So then we see this Nexus finishes just in time, with the Mothership core having just enough energy for a photon overcharge. The 3 gateways, providing just enough warp-in defense, and this Colossus is waiting here to either reinforce the battle up here if Bly had decided to engage there, or to defend the natural expansion. When I originally watched this, I thought that this natural expansion, like the Colossus couldn't get out, and then I forgot that you can just walk down ledges. So, even though ordinarily someone might describe this as, wow, like a really close call, what a dangerously close push, do note that no drones here. In fact, drone count at 48, 63 probes going on for Feast. Even if he loses this, he's still quite ahead economically. As you can see in the income tab, he's just light years ahead in terms of minerals. He's getting just barely the right units. He's gotten just enough gateways to be able to do some reinforcing warp-ins to defend this expansion. And now that this expansion is up, Feast will comfortably gas and use it as an anchor point to do aggressive pushes up to this top side. I thought this was just a really gorgeous build. Just absolutely excellent. Mothership core tucked neatly up here, but floating in between these 2 bases. So Nexus here can position right on top of this ridge, as opposed to, say, having the Mothership core here, where it can't quite get back and forth quickly enough. And short walk distances from here to here. I mean, you can actually just see the 2 buildings, like, within the same screen. And even more so if I do that. So it's convenient for slow units like Colossus and non-speed Zealots and Sentries. All of them have a move speed of 2.25. It's not important that you know that move speed, only that you know that it's very slow. And then at the very back end, all this Thermal Lance and this Forge, goody goodness. +2 could have been earlier, but already at +1 attack. So, let's see what I want to say. Okay, so I want to note just some more, just some broad things, and then when we go to break, we're actually going to start the game over and look really in-depth at Feast's build. But the sort of salient aspects are going Stargate and just getting 1 Void Ray. That's it, just the 1 Void Ray. The goal of which is to force the opponent to get a little bit of anti-air, such as Hydralisks, maybe a Spire, which is already slow, and and to discourage the Zerg from going roaches. And then Feast instantly expands, has really excellent positioning, looks really great, and barely gets up this Colossus in time. Because if I'm forcing you to go Hydras, I better have something that can answer the Hydras. So on a surface level, it makes sense. Force you to go Hydras, expand while you're getting them, and then have the Colossus done by the time they're up. Mothership Core for a little bit of extra insurance. When we come back in part 2, we're going to look at the nitty-gritties to Feast build. Exactly why is he able to get all this stuff up? How is he managing his economy? What are some very particular things that he's doing in terms of cutting units, scouting, and whatnot that permits him to do this? And we're going to oogle at him a lot. This is a build that I don't think is very viable on a variety of maps, but Feast clearly has us well prepared on this one. We'll also talk a little bit about the idea of having a problem and what solutions Feast is doing with it. Having the problem and doing these solutions. Always want to have solutions prepared as opposed to in the game when you're like, oh, he's going Hydras. Shit, I guess he can go Hydras. What should I do now? Everything is pre-prepared from Feast. So we'll look at that in part 2. Doink. Shoot, boink. Yeah. Be back in a sec.